Donald Trump, in the wake of the Istanbul airport terrorist attack, has now quadrupled down, quintupled down, whatever the fuck it is at this point, on war crimes.
Well, they asked me the question. I said, I'll answer that question. They said, what do you think about waterboarding? I said, I like it a lot, and I don't think it's tough enough. You know, we're living in medieval times. We have to stop it. We have to be so strong. We have to fight so viciously and violently because we're dealing with violent people, vicious people. We have laws. And the laws say you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do, a lot, right? Their laws say you can do anything you want, and the more vicious you are, the better. So we can't do waterboarding, which is, it's not the nicest thing, but it's peanuts compared to many alternatives, right? So we can't do waterboarding. But they can do chopping off heads, drowning people in steel cages. They can do whatever they want to do. They probably think we're weak, we're stupid, we don't know what we're doing, we have no leadership. You know, you have to fight fire with fire. We have people out there.
I don't know what's more gross. The chance of USA for the most un-American ideas or Trump's standalone comments. So let me put this into perspective for people. His idea is, very simply, let's copy ISIS. Hey, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys, so we gotta do what we gotta do. We gotta get our hands dirty to beat the bad guys. So in order to beat the bad guys, let's become bad guys ourselves. Let's do the exact same tactics that they do and become just as immoral as they are because we have to defeat them. Except when you stoop to their level and you do their tactics, that's bad because the tactics are the problem. Nobody's a good guy or a bad guy by definition. Your actions define who you are. So what Trump apparently doesn't know is that the people at Guantanamo, for example, the people at Abu Ghraib who we tortured, at least, according to the Senate torture report, at least 20% of those people were innocent. The number's likely much higher, and that's just what they admit to. So what did we do? Well, we did anal rape torture, anal feeding torture, hypothermia torture, where you throw cold water on somebody and leave them in a cold cell. Somebody died, by the way, when we did that, and that person was totally innocent of any wrongdoing whatsoever. We do mock burials. We do physical violence against people. So we did all these forms of torture, which were jacked from a communist Chinese manifesto on how to torture. We call it enhanced interrogation. And then come to find out, many of the people we tortured were just innocent. In fact, probably most of them were, because we know how the people got to Guantanamo, for example. The Bush administration cut a deal with warlords in Pakistan and Afghanistan and told them to send us jihadists because we had just gotten attacked on 9/11. So what did those warlords do? It turns out warlords aren't very trustworthy. So who would have thunk it? So they rounded up people who were just people they didn't like, their enemies in the region, and they shipped them to us and said, yeah, they're in al-qaeda. So we ended up torturing people who were totally innocent. So, but see, that's what happens when you want to go down this path that Donald Trump wants to go down. People like to live in the Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris, idiotic movie world where we always get the right people. When we torture people or when we do violence, it's always the right people. It's never the wrong people. Under the Obama administration, nobody would argue Obama isn't more intelligent than Donald Trump. Under his administration, what's the rate of getting the wrong target with drones? 90%. That's according to internal government memos. This is from the drone papers which were recently leaked. So under Obama, we 90% get the wrong people with drones. You trust Donald Trump making these decisions? You trust Donald Trump picking out who to torture? You think he really gives a fuck and he'll do a thorough investigation as to who is al-qaeda, who is ISIS, who isn't, who's an innocent civilian? He doesn't give a fuck. This is the guy who said ban all Muslims from entering the U.S. He already has that mindset of, guilty enough, they're Muslim. You don't think he'd be the exact same when it comes to torture and when it comes to war and when it comes to violence? Of course he would be. And then on top of all this, dude, these are the people who claim they love the Constitution. The Constitution protects from cruel and unusual punishment. Don't you ever come out again and say, oh, I believe in the Constitution, I believe in the Constitution, I believe in the Constitution. It's not debatable, not debatable, not debatable. It's not a debatable document. It is what it is. We got to have a literal interpretation of it. Okay, well, the government cannot administer cruel and unusual punishment. By doing waterboarding, or worse, as Trump says, by doing torture, yeah, that is cruel and that is unusual. Furthermore, there's no due process. There's nothing set up in place to try to figure out whether or not we have the right people, which is how we got ourselves into a mess where we got all these people who turned out to be totally innocent. So the thing about Trump that's so scary is he's taking all the things that to one extent or another were done to a lesser degree under the Bush administration and yes, continued under the Obama administration with CIA black sites, with the 90% drone death rate. He's taking all of that, which honestly is a national embarrassment, and it's a shame that we did it. And yes, it does help jihadists because it helps them recruit by using these things as messaging and propaganda against the United States. He's taking it and he's going, yeah, I don't care about any of the downsides. That's the right thing to do. That's the moral thing to do. That's the just thing to do. That is the most American thing to do. His audience chants USA, USA as we talk about how we are going to violate international law and we are going to commit war crimes. And hey, do we get the wrong people? Who cares? Guilty enough. Guilty enough. This is a guy who said the Geneva Conventions is, quote, the problem. This is a guy who says we need to torture, quote, even if it doesn't work. He said that at other times. This is a guy who went on Fox and Friends and said, we need to go after the families of ISIS, not just ISIS, the families of ISIS. So kill civilians in the Middle East. That's one of the things he said. And he wasn't backpedaling from it. That's what I want to do. Even the Fox hosts were like, oh, this is the guy you want to vote for and you want to take a fucking chance on? This is the guy you want to take a chance on. You don't defeat this monster by becoming this monster. Don't become the devil that you're trying to avoid. ISIS is bad, and they are horrific, and they're horrific because they do things like beheadings and torture and all these horrible actions. A solution to that isn't to do our own beheadings and our own torture and our own horrible actions. That's not a strategy to defeat them, Donald. That's a strategy to become them. We're America. We're better than that.